Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the classic film Son of Dracula as part of our March to Halloween in 2022. This is episode 381, and our friend Tony Salvaggio is actually being our man in Havana right now. He is on the ground in Austin, Texas, covering the Fantastic Fest, so we've got a special guest filling in for him. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen Son of Dracula, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, coming soon to Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Howdy.
Howdy. And like I said, we've got someone covering from Tony while he is on assignment. So from Mendon, Michigan, Lee Freiling is
You
an
will
itinerant.
announce me.
I will. Yes, announce me. Yeah. Lee Freiling is an itinerant teacher, actress, adventuress, motherer, full-time hobbit, craftswoman. She's currently knitting, as far as I can see on the camera. Singer and musician. She also edits. She's worked a lot with the Castle Bridge Media. She is the co-writer of Dark of the Curl, the new Surf Mystic novel, and under the pen name of Peyton Douglas. And she is a big fan of horror podcasts, and that was actually how we hooked up. Welcome, Lee.
I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you. I am embroidering a capybara.
Oh, that's
I love
lovely.
those.
Wonderful. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Son of Dracula. You know, I'm actually struggling to remember if I've ever actually seen this movie from beginning to end before this, but it seems impossible to imagine I had. Son of Dracula is a 1943 American horror film directed by Robert Siodmak with a screenplay based on an original story by his brother Curt. The film stars Lon Chaney Jr., Louise Allbritton, Robert Paige, Evelyn Ankers, and Frank Craven. It's set in the U.S., where Count Alucard, nobody is fooled by the name Alucard, not for a moment. Count Alucard has just taken up residence. Katherine Caldwell, a student of the occult, becomes fascinated by him, eventually marries him. Katherine begins to look and act strangely, leading her former romantic partner, Frank, to suspect that something has happened to her.
To be fair, she always looked and acted strangely.
Yeah, I mean, she was always kind of she was a spacey chick. So this
Sort of proto goth.
Yeah, for sure. I like this girl a lot.
I liked her a lot too.
The film is the third in Universal's Dracula series, following Dracula's daughter. You can get it on this Blu-ray collection that has these three plus the two House, and also Abbott and Costello. So that's pretty cool. You got House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, and Abbott, and on Blu-ray, and that's neat. So okay. Anyway, why don't we get started? It's been a while since we started with Drew, so let's go Drew, Julia, and then Lee, and then I'll go. What we do, Lee, here for the opening thoughts, you give like 2 minutes of your opening thoughts on sort of where your own thesis of the film is going to go, and then we'll go right into it.
I think Leah's listened to the podcast, so
well,
she probably.
I'm contextualizing everything.
Excuse me. I appreciate it, though.
No, absolutely. Mr. Drew, lay it on us. What are your opening thoughts about Son of Dracula? I don't know. I apologize. I'm super excited to talk about Son of Dracula. It's just really neat. Go ahead, Drew.
So, I have had a sort of reassessment of this movie as I have gotten older. The conventional wisdom regarding this one is that it is one of the weaker Universal movies, and I mean it's definitely not up there with the highs of, say, Bride of Frankenstein or anything like that. But the usual criticism is that the setting, setting it in this sort of Southern Gothic fairy tale world threw off the Universal vibes, which is usually in this sort of Eastern European space. and that Chaney was miscast as a vampire. I've come around to sort of disagreeing with that. I really like the setting. I think that it's used really effectively. Some racial insensitivity aside, but I also think I think it's funny that horror fans sort of throw stones their way at Lon Chaney Jr. in this as being too big, too American to this for this role, when it's the same sort of stuff that he has a lot of the same energy that Jack Palance projects as Dracula, and lots of people love that Dracula, but I think that Chaney's height is used to great effect. He just towers over just about everybody else in the movie, and he like effortlessly tosses people around. And I like how at the same time he's got this sort of blasé attitude about he's got haughtiness about him. He is very different than the Bela Lugosi Dracula. So I think if you go in expecting that, then of course you're going to be kind of thrown off. But just taken as his own character, I think Lon Chaney Jr. is kind of a cool vampire. I've completely 180'd my opinion on this in recent years. I also think the effects are quite for the time. There's a few rubber bats that don't look good, but the transformations into bats and into mists, like they're pretty cool for the time period. So I like that stuff. So I've come around to quite liking this one. I don't understand a lot of the criticisms of it when I view it with my the eyes of a aging horror fan, I guess.
That's wonderful. All right. Okay. That sets up a lot of good stuff for us. Julia, what about you?
So there's a lot of things I really love about this film. I love the effects, the effects when he becomes a bat and vice versa. Like the way they use the smoke effects are just super cool. All of that. I love all the high contrast shadows and patterns everywhere. The sets, how it looks, everything. I really like that woman. I think she's really interesting, a really interesting character. And what's the character's name that Louise plays? Allbritton. Allbritton is the actor's name.
Claire or Kay?
Yeah,
The main
Kay.
one is Kay, and the other
Yeah,
one's Claire.
K. So I really like her. I'm sorry, Drew, but I'm one of those that just really was distracted by Lon Chaney Jr. in this role. I'm like, oh, it's just that I don't mind his size or the physicality. That's fine. It's just his face, the way he delivers lines, and the super uber American accent, it really bothers me. And I don't like Jack Palance either. I actually told Jason, because he was talking about different Draculas, I'm like, no, he is actually in the same level as Jack Palance, and I don't like either one of them for Dracula. So that does bug me, but fortunately, if you don't really care for Lon Chaney Jr. as Dracula, he's not actually in the film that much. It's actually a much lesser character than in some other movies.
We should discuss that, because I'm not sure that's the case.
I
Relative
feel like
to
he's gone a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff with the other two characters with the let's see, I'm trying to get the names right, with Frank and Kay, and then Claire, and then the professor, and all those people. There's a lot of people that are in it. They're more than I think Dracula is. But anyway, so that's that was just my one kind of not really a fan.
The casting and character of Dracula is going to be our first topic. So hold that thought. That's a really good one. So okay. And Lee, what would you add to that?
Son of Dracula. Dracula returns as middle-aged Midwestern dad to terrorize a very interesting, clearly soundstage set of the South. We know it's the South because there are people of color in servant positions. We do not know it from anyone having any kind of an accent, except Lon Chaney's, which is wrong. It is the wrong accent.
It's an Oklahoma accent, no less. By the way,
man.
it's
I came up with some new titles because really he's not the son of Dracula. That never actually comes up.
Right, true.
So I came up with Frank and the Very Bad No Good Weekend. And Scarlett O'Hara, the vampire, will never leave Tara again.
Yes.
And honestly, like, I had fun with it. I really love black and white movies. But listening to Rosie came in, my daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, came in about halfway through, and it was very clear at that point that this is going to be the most bloodless, sexless vampire movie ever. So she was fine to sit and watch it with me. And this is her take on it. Mommy, is that girl going to marry the vampire? I was like, yes. Where is his pointy teeth? Sweetheart, I don't know.
Right.
When are the pointy teeth coming? Is he a bat? Yes, he's a bat. Mommy, I think this girl is making a bad choice, and I think someone needs to sit her in quiet time
Good.
because
I
she
love
should
it.
marry the prince and not the vampire. So I think I'm winning at parenting if we judge it from watching this film. But yeah, it's a great plot. It's a really great plot, and Lon Chaney Jr. is the problem, because if he were clever or menacing or sneaky at all, then Kay outwitting him would have been great, and Frank triple decking the whole thing would have been just the icing on the cake. But Lon Chaney Jr. just kind of seems baffled most of the time, and it was hard to get past that. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Julia.
Let's go straight into the discussion of Lon Chaney, because to me, there are moments when I feel like Lon Chaney Jr. has where the script is doing him favors, and he really has command of the material. Like, there's a moment when which one is the doctor, when Dr. Brewster sneaks back to the plantation that Dracula has taken over, and he sneaks down into the basement, and the Count shows up. And this is an element, Drew, of one of these scenes that gets played in the Universal Draculas a lot, where the vampire and the person in the know talk to one another, and there's subtext, which is that they both know what they're really talking about.
Yeah.
And Dracula has this great line, where he goes, he goes, "What are you doing here?" And the doctor goes, "Well, I thought I heard something in the basement." And Dracula goes, "I too thought that I heard something in the basement." And that was really good, because first of all, as you mentioned, he's like a head and a half taller than that guy, and he's on the stairs, and he's just looking down at him, and there's something very like funny and imposing about Lon Chaney.
Yeah, Chaney could just like throttle the life out of that guy, even if he wasn't a vampire. If he wanted to, he could have just picked up that old man and like tossed him down the stairs. So it's almost like he's dealing with, like, you could take the vampire stuff out of this and like just make it about a serial killer. And
a con artist.
I think it would still work for me. I like, first of all, you two are allowed to not like this. That's what makes the world go round. But, and again, you are more in line with what most people feel about this. I just, and at one
like
point,
I say, I like the film. I just don't particularly care for him as the
at one point I was jiving to that, but like I don't know, like somewhere along the ways of my dozen or so rewatches of this movie, like again, I think it helps if I do think of him as a character separate from the Bela Lugosi Dracula.
Is this, first of all, in the world of Universal, is this the Bela Lugosi Dracula? Just recast. Is it the same character?
I mean,
I don't think we can argue that, because they specifically call it Son of Dracula. So I think they're already, just by the title, taking a step away from the Bela Lugosi. But I just want to address this scene really quickly, because I did also really enjoy this scene. And I think the difference is, Drew, is that in this scene, you can tell Lon Chaney Jr. is having fun. Like, you can tell that he's actually like chewing the scenery a little bit and having fun. Whereas in like the rest of the film, he either looks like he's not sure what's going on, or he's like, oh yes, there's a beautiful woman here, I should do something about that. Or like he picks her up and kind of carries her like a sack of potatoes. Like, it's really not a graceful carry. And he just looks like he's a little bit lost. But this scene, he's having fun. He's like, yeah, we're doing the subtext thing. I'm having a good time.
Who is Chaney? Is he known, Drew, or does anybody know the 40s? Is Chaney known at this point as, if you were walking down the street in Hollywood, is he known as Lawrence Talbot? Is he known as Lenny? Like, what is?
I mean, at this point, he's definitely known as the Wolfman, because that's what made him a movie star, and that's why they kept putting him in these types of roles. But to your point, Lee, I feel like Oops, sorry, I just broke my chair.
No, it's fine.
Oh, no.
Oh no, are
Yeah,
you okay?
yeah,
You don't have to feel that strongly about it, Drew.
I'm so passionate. Um, to your point, I feel like the script here, there's a lot of weirdness with the screenwriting of this, because the
Mm,
Siodmaks had kind of a sibling rivalry, and so
mm,
the director had his own brother fired from writing this because yeah, so
mm,
he brought in another person to finish it up, who was actually the credited screenwriter. And
mm.
I feel like some of the deficiencies in the scripting are possibly because of that, because as you said, like a lot of scenes, they don't give Dracula quite as much motivation as they do in this scene, and I think that is a fair criticism. I also think there's other things, like Evelyn Ankers' character basically just disappears in the climax, so
That's
like,
true.
yeah, there's some problems with the script, but
I will say, I mean, I'm going to make a note of this because I want to get back to it, but I feel like gender. So this is going to sound like the most ignorant thing anybody ever said about a movie from the 40s,
Oh, good.
but watching there's so many men involved, at the police station and going on their posse and stuff like that. And I was aching for some of those men to be women. I mean, I really feel like we could have used. Again, I feel like this is just asking, a stone to be a piece of metal, but but
There could
it
have
needs
been,
more
yes.
variety.
Yeah,
I
there could have been more women, but I will say, like I say, that Louise, that Catherine's character is so much more interesting than so many of the damsels
Mm.
in distress that are in other
Well, yeah,
films.
she's not underwritten. I mean, she actually gets to do a lot. But sticking with Dracula for just a moment, I was thinking about the fact that Universal never really does seem to settle on who Dracula is, because if you think of like that, they had Lugosi do his Lugosi thing, and when we talked about the weird thing about watching Lugosi as Dracula is that last time I watched it, I realized that his Dracula appears to be completely alien, like just a
yeah.
very strange meat puppet who is somehow being ambulated and doesn't really know how to talk to people and is weird. This guy is not like that at all. I mean, this character is more like what I likened it to when Jolie and I were watching. I was like, this is like a guy from Unsolved Mysteries, one of those con artists who comes in and takes over people's farms, and
But
yeah. Go
we
ahead.
have that now. We have that now because we have, counting on my hands for those of you listening, we have 5 different Spider-Mans.
Oh yeah,
We have 5
that's true.
different Spider-Mans. They're all completely different. 2 of them are animated. And in that movie, there are actually like 100 million different Spider-Mans because they're all from different universes. But like if you sat down and you compared Tom to Garfield to Tobey Maguire, like
Wow.
that is 3
Yeah.
completely different takes on a Spider-Man that was always written usually pretty much the same way.
That's so. Once you introduce a human person to walk around in the costume and read the lines, you introduce infinite variety, right?
Well,
That's what's really cool. Yeah,
they
go ahead, Drew.
do. You ask the question of whether or not this is Dracula's son or Dracula. They give themselves enough of an out there even within the movie, because they have Professor Laszlo at one point say, well, perhaps he is a descendant of Dracula.
Right.
So
Yeah, because he
any
says the last time we heard of anybody was a long time ago, but he didn't know
And
yeah,
anybody.
you're right. They
so
never
you
do clear that up. Yeah.
so you could but what they're doing there is they're
Is hedging
hand
their bets.
waving away, like like, because like Lugosi, like, I mean, I don't have to say that Lugosi looms very large in the role of
Yeah.
Dracula. He still does, even in the 21st century. But this is Chaney couldn't do a Lugosi Dracula, so he's doing this big bruiser
Yeah.
Dracula who throws people around. And I think, whether he's 100% perfect for the role or not, I do think it opens the door for stuff later, like Christopher Lee's Dracula, who
Mm,
is again much more physically imposing and more earthy than mysterious, because like Bela Lugosi is this very mysterious figure, Like this Dracula, this vampire seems very much like he's of the earth that he's sleeping in. And that he's the sort of guy that is gonna get in a fight with somebody, and he's it's he never you'll note he never tries to hypnotize anybody. Everybody who does anything with him in this is a willing participant.
Oh
No,
he
I
hypnotizes
disagree.
everybody.
Yeah,
He
I
hypnotizes
disagree.
everybody.
Yeah,
You think?
he absolutely goes in and immediately because remember when they wake the judge up in the middle of the night and she's like, we want to be married, and he's like, what? And then he looks at Dracula and he's like, of course, like immediately, just
That's
like
right.
he just has to look at people and
Jedi
they're like,
mind
oh, okay,
tricks. Yeah,
it's
that's
Jedi
true.
mind tricks, total Jedi mind
But
tricks.
it's
And
true that he doesn't.
the first time you see him, he says, "You will announce me." And the guy was like, "No, no, no. There's been a death. They're not receiving." He goes, "You will announce me." And the guy
I
gets this
don't
big
know.
weird look on his face and
that
goes,
one
"Yes, I
feels-
will announce you."
Yeah, that one feels less like hypnosis and more like
But-
a servant going, you're white, I'm black, I'm gonna
But
do
what he
say."
doesn't do, though, to Drew's point, I think he uses Jedi mind tricks a lot in this movie, but he doesn't do the hand kind of. There's none of that weird fluidity in the hand motions and all that stuff that Lugosi brought to it. And
Well,
I'm
they
not
don't even-
complaining. I'm just saying it's.
No, I'm complaining. I am complaining because I really missed that. I really missed the way that they would do the lighting on Bela Lugosi's eyes when he was trying to and then the
Ooh,
eyebrows would
But
furrow.
it would be a
That's
fantastic. Fool's errand to have another actor do that, because
That's my point. That's why I don't like having Lon Chaney Jr. in this role, because it doesn't feel
Julia,
like
do you
a real
recall?
Dracula.
Did you dig John Carradine, or do you remember John Carradine in
I
this
don't
role?
remember John Carradine either.
To me, this is a much more memorable turn as Dracula than Carradine was.
100%.
Yeah, but it's no Bela Lugosi. No,
I'm not trying to say it's on the level of Bela Lugosi. Like I curated a whole Lugosi retrospective for this podcast. I love Bela Lugosi, but I
love.
think,
Wait. I got to back up here. I love that we're curating the retrospectives. I'm going to start using that. That's fantastic. It makes it sound like we're like a museum or something.
You're so erudite.
It's because we're classy. We're a castle.
So much fancier than anything I would come up with.
So, but before I do want to get to this just remarkable setting that I think makes this movie just worthy of watching over and over, even if we're not necessarily, even if there continue to be questions about the casting of Dracula himself. I want to get to that setting, but before that, let's talk a bit about the woman who really spins the plot into existence, which is Louise Allbritton as Katherine Caldwell, or Kay. And she is an occultist, which was a deal, all right, in the 30s and 40s. She is, she's part of a movement of people who are obsessed with occult powers and being able to use them. And she's so confident that she's going to be able to arrange to have lots of occult powers that she even gives up all of her inheritance so that she can keep the estate.
And she has Madame Zimba on retainer.
Yeah, she has her own witch doctoress.
Queen Zimba.
Yeah, Queen Zimba.
Queen Zimba, yeah.
Yeah, this old lady in the swamp. And this kind of a spiritualist is a character that I feel like we don't see this character a lot recently, except for as a joke. Like, for instance, in Witchboard, do you remember you have a spiritualist character who shows up and she's a medium and she's a goofball? But this woman is not that at all. Everybody thinks she's odd, but she's a little scary. And it's neat that she has way more agency than you would expect out of a female lead in one of these movies.
Well, did anybody really serious Seventh Victim vibes from this movie?
I still haven't seen The Seventh Victim. I've been wanting to watch that, and I just haven't watched it.
Oh, we should totally do The Seventh Victim.
Yeah.
And this actor, I just love her. I love how she always has this really weird, like, she always kind of looks out of the corner of her eye as if she's got like a neck brace on, so she can't quite turn her head. So she's always kind of looking, and it gives her the creepiest kind of appearance. And I like her so much. I thought that was
the tarantula mascara is like,
she's fantastic.
That's a play right there.
And then she's already creepy enough, and then when she becomes a vampire, she's like super white, and then her eye, same thing again with the eyes, and she just always looks creepy. I loved her.
She has great hair too. Like she has like the Betty Page bangs, a good
Yes.
decade before
Yeah.
Betty Page, and she's got these sort of flowy Lily Munster gowns that she wears. Like
Literally a note: diaphanous gown is diaphanous. Like all of that.
But I love all of their 1940s clothing, all these patterns that they have with the stripes and the cutouts and the everything. I mean, it's like a really good Joan Crawford movie. They're all wearing such amazing dresses. I love the hair. I mean, all of that stuff. It reminds me of like early Superman and everything. It's just it's gorgeous looking.
I
And
apologize, Drew. I interrupted you.
which one of us? Me? Not
I
me.
interrupted Drew.
Oh.
I was just gushing over her aesthetic. Like I feel like that like this character should be mentioned. Like you always see the sort of evolution of the sort of goth chick archetype in
Mhm.
pop culture, which usually like they'll show the Luna character from Mark of the Vampire, then jump to
Mhm.
Morticia Adams, then Vampira, then
Yeah, they
Elvira.
totally skipped this gal and they totally
She-
skipped Seventh Victim.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she's awesome. Like I would love to see fan art of this character.
Enough.
I don't understand why, like like there you don't see dozens of people cosplaying as this character. Although Jamie has had her hair quite a few times, so
Mhm.
there's that. But that was also unintentional.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. I would certainly you could do a really cool doll with her in
Yeah.
one of these dresses. Yeah. I'm also
Unpopular
realizing.
opinion:
Go ahead.
she's not the main character, and neither is Frank, and neither is Dracula.
All right, I'm interested. Who is
The
the main
main
character?
character is Dr. Brewster. He does all the heavy lifting, and I
Oh,
love
it's
him.
true.
Whoever that actor is, he and Laszlo are like dream team. They're figuring this out. They have it figured out in the first 10 minutes. He's like, oh, this
Yes.
is clearly a
He's
vampire.
played
I'm going
by
to
an
call my
actor
friend
called
who's an expert on vampires.
he's called Frank Craven, the actor.
He played the stage manager in Our Town on
Oh, that's
Broadway.
what
I
Jason.
played that role. That's a really cool role. He's
That's what
awesome.
Jason played the manager in Our Town when I met him. That's when I fell in love. That's when I fell in love with him.
Aw, so
Yep,
nice.
that's
Yeah,
so awesome.
that was something like 1987.
You are 100% right though. Dr. Brewster is the real protagonist of this movie, and as far as vampire hunters go, he's very successful. Like you're right.
Yeah.
Like within seconds, he's like, that's Dracula spelled backwards.
Yes.
I know, I laughed so
Yeah,
hard.
I love when he's looking at the he writes it diagonal. I'm like, that's so cool, so that he can look at it either way.
It's funny how Dracula basically operates in this movie where he's got a disciple who's kind of brought him in. So Kay is essentially like doing the Renfield character.
Well, she's pretending to be the Renfield character.
Right. No, absolutely. That's what we got to. In fact, you're right. We should talk about that now again before we get to the setting. But
Like, how did he not Jedi mind power that she was gonna double cross him? Like, come
Well,
on,
Aaron,
I
Dracula.
think it's arrogance.
Yeah.
Like he can't imagine
that's why
a
he doesn't give a
mortal
shit
woman.
about. Yeah, he doesn't even come up with a good alias because he doesn't care. He truly doesn't think that anybody's going to be able to put up a decent.
And I
defense.
mean,
And that's why he should have killed Brewster on the stairway. I'm sitting here going, okay, if you don't care, then just get rid of the threat. Just kill him. But he doesn't. He just has really good dialogue with him.
so to no prize the thing about not Jedi mind tricking Kay, she is an occultist, so maybe she's somehow strengthened her mind
Maybe.
against him,
Maybe.
against his spell.
Man,
Good,
I like
mind
that.
She always
work
had
on the
that
weak
goal.
mind.
Yeah, she always had the goal of becoming, like when ever since she knows about him, she's like, I want to become immortal. So she doesn't ever need to fall for his spell because she's got this mission.
Plus,
Yeah.
like he does think that she is the Renfield essentially, and like I want to point out, before we move on to the setting, like Dracula's motivations in this are very close to the Dracula in the book, where he is like, my country is old and dried up. I'm going to go to this younger country and suck them dry. So
See, and I think that another reason why it really bothers me to have Lon Chaney Jr. with his American accent is because you have that dialogue is delivered by Professor Laszlo, who is Hungarian. So he has this gorgeous accent, and he's like saying all this stuff about the home country, and then you got this guy with this American accent supposedly.
Well, and then
moved
you
to
have the
America.
little boy who's like, there was a scary man with a
Foreign,
accent, a scary foreign man.
man.
I was
Right,
like,
right,
yes,
right.
Illinois is extremely foreign if you're in Savannah.
Yeah.
That's
God, it just really drove me bonkers.
I see that.
Although people having the wrong accent for wherever they're at or what they're playing is kind of a universal horror tradition.
True.
That's true.
But it always bugs me when it stands out that much. Like when it's, and this is not universal, but like whenever Jason, what's the line that Sean Connery has about how he's from Spain and he's called
oh, actually I'm Egyptian.
Yes.
What was all the names that he had?
by way
He
of
is,
Edinburgh.
if I recall, he was Juan Sanchez Villalobos
In Highlander.
Ramirez, but I'm forgetting another name.
I don't know.
It's
But it
Juan
was just
Sanchez
hilarious.
Villalobos Ramirez, but actually I'm Egyptian.
But he
That's
says the
uno
whole
si
thing with
one,
his like
which
super
is
thick
uno.
Scottish accent, and that again, stuff like that just sticks out for me as being so just like just wrong. I know, Jason, you hate this expression, so cover your ears, but it totally takes me out of the movie when that happens.
Yes.
I'm like, oh.
Well, and then there's other examples like poor Sam Neill, who's a Kiwi, he's a New Zealander,
Yeah.
and he shows up on set for Jurassic Park, and Spielberg's like, okay, I need you to do an American accent, and Neil's like, oh my god, I hate America. Okay, fine, you're Spielberg, I'll do whatever you want. And then 2 days later, Spielberg's like, yeah, that voice you're using, and he's like, yeah. He's like, what? You just do your normal voice. Just be Sam. Just
Really?
do you. Yeah. He's like, okay, all right, fine. I'll be a Kiwi. And then 2 days later, Spielberg comes back and he goes, yeah, you know that voice you're using? And Sam's like, yes, my voice, the voice, yeah, my voice, I'm familiar. Spielberg's like, can we do like half and half?
Oh my god.
So
I never heard
Sam
that
Neill's
story.
like, so I spent the rest of my career with everyone thinking, Sam Neill, he's not very good at American accents.
Oh
is he?"
no.
Oh my god.
That's
really funny.
terrible. Poor guy.
You know something though? I've watched that movie many times, and I've never been distracted by Sam Neill's accent. Not once.
I kind of enjoy the weird cadence of his Dr. Grant voice, but
Yes.
keeping it on the topic of a much
Son of
earlier,
Dracula.
much earlier Universal genre movie.
Yeah.
I am more troubled. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's Dracula, and we've seen so many actors with different accent doing Dracula. Like, I am less troubled about that than the lack of Southern accent in all of these Southern people in this movie.
And that gets us
Very
to the
fair.
setting. All right. We spent a few weeks in the Psycho-Biddy universe, of the 60s. This takes us back to this mint julep, weeping willow, swampy, plantation, haunted Southern, it just drips with
Gone with the Wind minus the accents, but with a McDaniel playing the
well said. That's right.
Because the Etta McDaniel who plays the maid here is the sister of Hattie.
And you remember how race was very much a part of like I Walked with a Zombie? Like, for instance, there's this very knowing bit, and I think Curt Siodmak wrote that script where one of the plantation workers is driving the new ingenue to the plantation where she's going to be, and he says, "Oh, that statue over there is the saint who weeps for the slaves, because we all work so hard, and there's weeping." And she goes, "It must be a lovely place to live." And he goes, "If you say so, miss." And that was an on the nose knowing bit of dialogue. There ain't none of that here. This is
I thought there is one line that I can't remember what it was that I was kind of like, oh, okay. That the brother, because it's actually her brother in real life as well. Etta McDaniel's brother is Sam, who plays the other servant. He has some line that he says that's like that, and I can't remember what it was. Where
I remember what it is. It's she tells him he's like, "Oh, ma'am, I'm gonna need some help though, because these boxes are too heavy." And she goes, "Oh, well, go get some of the other boys to help you." And he's like, "Oh, thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I had not thought of that, ma'am. Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am."
Yeah.
Thank you,
I'm
man.
like, "Oh, you
Yeah,
are so salty
totally.
right now."
Oh my gosh.
I
Thank you, man.
I think it was Jim Shooter in Marvel Comics ripped most of this plot off to use in a script. Might have been Marv Wolfman. I really can't remember if it was Shooter or Wolfman. But where Dracula wanders into the South and falls in love with this girl, and she's more of an ingenue than this character here, and he winds up making a deal. He'll get the girl if he will command a Confederate regiment, which was really fascinating. But a lot of the just environment was clearly borrowed from this film. The concept of putting Dracula into the Old South. Although this is not, that was Dracula during the Civil War. This is Dracula in the Old South of the 1940s, which is
It's like everything with Universal though, there's a weirdness about that because you have cars and phones and things like that, but then
yeah,
there's also people still using like wagons and riding
yes.
around on horses. So,
Although to be fair, this is 1943. My grandpa told me that when he had to go sign up for the Selective Service, they rode horses to Tulsa.
Yeah, because only some people have only super rich people have cars, so not everybody.
Can you dig this, by the way? I
This
just want
is
it for a
not the
moment.
South. This
He
is a
and
soundstage.
that
It's not the greatest soundstage I've.
well, wait. Okay, hold that thought. Now we'll skip the horses thing. Let's talk about that soundstage because I love that soundstage. I love it. I want to live on this thing. It is,
I
first
love
of
it
all,
too.
it seems to
I'm
go on
looking at
for
it going.
miles.
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
huge.
you are not on location. I've been to Nolans. This is not the South. This is not the no.
But does that
Like,
bother you? I like the stage bound look. It
here's when
feels
the set
better than
bothered
you.
me. Here's the one that I'm like, I love sound stages. I love the way they look. I love the crispness. I love them, especially in black and white movies. And it's nice because it lets the camera be really lurky. Like you get a really lurky feeling from it, which is nice. But the one
I don't know
time
what
it
that
bothers
means,
me.
but yeah, go ahead. And
I'm
then
going
come
quick.
back to Lurky.
The one time it bothers me is when Dracula's coffin is on fire
Right.
and he's just yelling at Frank to put it out, who is definitely not going to put it out, instead of, I don't know, picking it up and putting it into the deep puddle of water that is right next to the coffin. Just put it in the water or put the water on. Come on, Dracula. Come on.
Yes. The finale is a little strange, although
it's a bit rushed.
yeah. But to that, talk to me about, you said a lurky camera. What does that mean? Like as opposed to if we just went out in the woods or into the big thicket in Texas, you
So
know.
the nice thing about a soundstage is it lets you set up different layers of depth really easily,
Mm.
and you actually have to because that's how you mask that the backdrop is static.
Mhm.
So it's the same in stagecraft. If you want to make things look more realistic, you add more layers because then it gives you the illusion of depth perception. So like the very first scene when they're on the little set with the train station,
Yes.
the camera is lurking behind some milk cans
Yeah.
and watching them, and it's
Yeah.
very clear that it feels like the camera is a person rather than the camera is just a fixed
Huh.
point of watching. And
Yeah.
that actually happens a few times in the course of the film where it'll come around a doorway or it'll come behind a dining room table or chair, whereas normally in these films it's all clear between the camera and the action, but this one
So this
layers
is
quite
George
nicely.
Robinson doing cinematography. There's a moment in the mansion that I brought to Julia's attention that was very similar to that, where I think it's when Brewster is snooping around.
Yep.
And there's a point where he puts the camera like in the foyer and he shoots like through the next room and through the next room to show Brewster like going up or down some stairs. And it's just all of this wild depth.
Mhm.
And as Julia pointed out, the shadows in this thing are wacko and all over the place. It is,
And
I
yeah,
want
they
to,
love these patterns.
yeah. I mean, I just want to fall asleep and live in a movie like this. You know,
And visually what that does psychologically for the audience is it makes Brewster smaller in the space, and the space becomes scary because there's so much depth and you understand there's so much that you can't see beyond the doorways, and
Mm.
he looks much smaller in the doorways, so they're setting up tension visually.
So I was thinking, Julia, we were talking about this. I don't remember this technique a lot. Like if we just watched, you know, we watch movies all the time. We just went to see how they run and stuff like that.
Is it good?
Oh yeah, no, we thought it was hilarious. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Totally going.
Um, But I would say I watch a lot of, because I go to the movies all the time. And so I watch a lot of old stuff and I watch a lot of new stuff. They don't do this stuff anymore. Nobody like explores the space in quite this way of doing all that depth, which is weird because we have
Well, we
the
haven't watched
films and
that.
all these.
What's that movie called? Is it Dark Alley? No, the Nightmare Alley. We haven't watched that. I suspect maybe some of that's
It
in
is
there.
definitely a night. Del Toro, okay. Del Toro does it. David Fincher does it, and the guy who does the really wacky movies does it.
Are you
Grand
talking?
Budapest Hotel
Wes
and
Anderson.
Wes
Wes
Anderson.
thank
Anderson.
you,
Yeah.
and Wes Anderson
So
does it.
I
yeah.
have to say also, I feel like that Sam Raimi does it. I know you're not the biggest fan, Jason, but he does have a
Mm.
very kinetic camera.
He does it. He just does it a lot faster. Like he doesn't
Oh
like
yeah,
slow pan. He's always like here, 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 here.
Whiplash.
Well, and I really can't wait to go see Amsterdam, which looks like it's going to be really interesting in terms of how the camera always seems to be coming from below the people. I think that's going to be really interesting to see. I might get annoying after a while, but I'm looking forward to it.
You
Who,
know, the set bound thing though is something I associate with universal horror. So like I grew up in an environment that looks like what is
Mhm.
they're attempting to pull off. Like it's swampy, it's marshy, and this looks like a dream version of that to me.
Yeah.
Like I and again, the syntheticness of it is something that I like about universal horror. Like I'm not always in the mood for that. Like sometimes I do want something that's a location shot, kind of thing. But when I'm in the mood to watch a classic horror film, this is definitely more the aesthetic that I want.
It's charming. It has a charm to it.
I was thinking about how
Yeah.
David Scal wrote about how we haven't talked about this in years, but David Scal wrote about how Universal tended to show Europe in this weird way that he likened to the way that World War One soldiers remembered Europe, as opposed to what it actually was. And what's interesting here is that they've then transported that to the United States so that you could be in Louisiana and still look at this and go, oh, what a dreamy, weird version of Louisiana.
Where did
You
they
know,
shoot this?
I'm sure they shot it on the Universal
Burbank, I'm sure.
backlot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee. Yeah.
Because like it's what they do get right, which is nice, is that in the South, even in the swamps and even in the Everglades, it's hard to see long distances because there's such a density of trees. But the trees are quite spaced apart. Which is not true up here in the north. Like there's literally, I drive past it every day. There's a section of forest on the drive. You can't see more than about 3 feet in, and then it's all darkness. You can't see anything. But this is nice because it lets you see
Yeah.
longer distances, and you get that
Yeah, they
nice,
have
like you
these
can
huge
watch Frank stumble
canopies.
into trees.
It is Universal Studios, by the way.
Speaking
in
of the
California.
set, there's a thing that's a lost opportunity when they describe, or in what you could call a pinch scene, which is where characters talk about something that's going to come up in a couple of scenes. They say Dracula is going to be at a big set piece at this old flume or whatever they call it, this old rotten log flume out there. But they don't show us it. They don't show it to us. Dracula gets there, as far as we can tell, he's in a barn. There's no, they describe it like it's going to be something like like it should be, like the large set at the end of Frankenstein,
Or
and
like there should
it's
be
not like
some
that.
meaning to that she's going to be in the children's playroom. That if that had some
Yeah.
meaning because she and Frank were children together and that was the room they spent a lot of time in, then that would have some meaning. But it's like, oh
It's
no,
so
she's
funny
just in
how
the
that gets
nursery.
dropped. You're right. Almost nothing
Yeah.
happens with that. Yeah. I mean, maybe they ran out of time.
Well, there's a fire. I mean, that happens.
Oh,
But
right. Yeah.
So what I thought was really interesting, my favorite line of the whole film, by the way, you were talking about Jason earlier, how Lon Chaney Jr. has that funny line that you enjoyed so much. My favorite line is actually also a Dracula line, and it's when he goes to where his coffin is, like out there at the barn thingy, and and Frank is already there, and he goes, "Well, it is seldom that my enemies are so accommodating."
Yes.
That was a good one.
I just love that.
He
I thought
enjoyed
was
it. He
so
had that little smirk on. He was like,
yeah,
ha
yeah,
ha
yeah.
ha.
It's like
Yeah.
awesome. I can just kill you here.
Maybe Dracula reincarnates in different forms, and sometimes he has a different accent. And
Oh no,
you know.
he is not supposed to have. He's supposed to be Hungarian. He's supposed to be from like whatever Transylvania kind of area. But
Wallachia.
anyway, yeah.
I think you're thinking too hard about this, Jason. He's not a
Yes.
different
Yeah.
incarnation of Dracula. The movie is called Son of Dracula. Lee is absolutely right. You can if you have you can just write any difference between him and the other versions of Dracula is they're part of the extended Dracula family.
For sure.
It's an escape
the
hatch.
yeah,
Yes.
the preceding movie was Dracula's daughter. This movie is Son of Dracula.
You are quite correct. You are absolutely correct. And
Oh,
I
new
would
title,
really
Middle Management Dracula.
I
I would watch.
see now that's something that Neil LaBute would make. The
Still, yeah,
yeah.
I'm still so jealous we got to talk to him.
Oh, that's so nice. So I want to talk for a second about received wisdom, which is this thing that Drew had mentioned, which is and that all of us have kind of talked about, which is that when I was growing up, this was the one that everybody regarded as the least of the universal Draculas. And maybe that's true, or maybe it's not. But what's crazy to me is how it can be really hard to overcome these things that we know that people have already told us, like oh, that's a lesser movie, or that's one of the greater movies, or this is the best performance that a certain actor has ever made, or so forth. And I wonder, it's just amazing to me that even though writing about movies has been much democratized, at least from pop criticism standpoint, we still have this. If you go to see the new movie Don't Worry Darling and you think it was excellent, you will be very much alone amongst a whole bunch of people who have already sort of received the wisdom that it has script problems and doesn't live up to the hype. Isn't that
Florence
interesting?
Pugh is fighting with everyone, but maybe it's a publicity stunt. I think it's just a case of don't read the reviews, don't read the comments, don't read the
Amen,
comments.
sister. I never read. I'm constantly going, why does anybody read the comments? I never read comments. I never read reviews.
And don't watch the trailer, whatever you do. Like the
No,
trailer
I actually enjoy
ruins.
trailers. I love trailers. I'll watch every trailer. I actually in my I have two parallel lives that I'm sure exist out there in the multiverse, and one of them I make movie trailers. I absolutely love movie trailers. The other one I am just a professional singer all the time. But that actually still might at some point. I keep saying I want to get a job singing in one of those choirs that does the satanic song music in all the scary movies, because I'm a choral soprano, so I just love the idea of doing doing the creepy choirs.
I'll join you. I'm a mezzo
still
and I
want-
can go down to tenor. So we'll be great. We'll do all the
yeah,
harmonies.
I still want that job. That's a job that I'm actually
Well,
holding
all
out
you got to do, look, there's still a month until Halloween. You should at least learn Ave Satani.
No, actually, it's not about learning because you can read the music. It's about having getting
Finding a place.
Tony
Yeah, but
actually
we
said
could go
I should look for the
Halloween
audition.
caroling. You could find some other people
Halloween
I want to do
and-
that
caroling.
now.
That's fantastic.
and
This
just
is
wander the
Halloween.
street.
This is Halloween.
Yes.
My kid sang that song at a thing last year.
Rosie has been begging me to put on the Amazon playlist, the kids' Halloween songs, and then she'll like get to one and she's like, "No, too scary. Turn it off. Turn it off." Okay,
Wow.
all right, kid.
How cool.
No, but trailers ruin things. Trailers ruined the Pet Sematary remake because it gave away everything in the trailer.
Oh no, we suffer
That's
through that all
funny.
the time, where we go, yeah, I kind of feel like I've seen the whole movie now.
I'm with Julia. I like movie trailers. I will say sometimes the movie trailer is better than the actual movie.
So true.
That's true.
Like the trailer for Wakanda Forever, like I actively got weepy during that
Yes,
trailer. It was so damn
same.
good. Yeah.
It better
like
be as good. The movie better live up to it. I think it will.
Yeah,
I'm
that
making
is that
Last watch Black Panther, so it's got to be good because I want to do a field trip.
let's do it. The I forget where I was coming from now. Movie trailers.
Ruining things, but also not ruining. Received
Well,
wisdom.
I was talking about received wisdom.
Yeah, okay.
If there's
so,
anything you'd like to add to that, yeah.
I think it's good to reassess things because, first of all, like, this is definitely not the worst Universal vampire movie. Like, I think, and I like House of Dracula, quite a bit. It's entertaining, but it's way worse than this. And the thing is that what made me come around on this is like, oh, everybody, talks shit about this movie. Why do I like to watch it so much?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's like, obviously there is something here that I enjoyed. And so I've actually watched this movie twice in the last month, and I was thoroughly enjoyed it both times. And so when you get to that point, I think it's good to investigate why you're enjoying something. And that's where good criticism comes from, is when you can, because I can still point out the stuff that I do think are flawed. Like I earlier did just say, the ending is a bit rushed and the script has some problems, but I like the atmosphere. I like a lot of the performances. I think the characters are cool. So like I think it's good to, especially if there's something that you're giving repeat viewings that's sort of against the grain of popular opinion. I think it's really good for your, at least as a mental exercise to look at why you're enjoying something.
I like that.
I'm the tabula rasa here. I did not start with the Universal horror. I started with Hammer. So I haven't seen any of this triptych onward down. So I'm watching it. I've never seen a trailer. I even had to ask, which one are we doing? There's a 43 and a 72. Which one is it?
Yeah,
the Ringo Starr, Son of Dracula.
Oh God. So over here, like, I had no received wisdom about this other than, hey, Sunday night we're doing a podcast. And it's
well,
still,
I think go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's still lovely. It's still enjoyable, but I can also sit here and go, man, this was a great plot and they just bungled it. They did not. This could have gone some really awesome places, and it didn't, and that's disappointing. But I still had a really good time. And can I have a series about Dr. Brewster? Because I would watch that.
So you can just go and write that, or like the guys at Soul Twin Audios, you could just start making audio dramas about Dr. Brewster.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
there we go.
he belongs
Brewster,
to Universal Horrors, so don't get too popular, or they'll
Brewster
go.
and Laszlo.
Yeah. Just slightly change those names. Just reverse those first letters.
Brewster and Baslow. There we go.
Yes.
I feel like we should take a minute to talk about Dr. Laszlo. We've talked about every
Yes,
other
you're exactly
character.
right. Yes. Go ahead.
He's our Van Helsing.
Go
ahead, Drew.
Well, what did Lee just say?
He's our Van Helsing.
He is totally the Van Helsing character, and I think he's kind of like the Van Helsing. He's a college professor. He's smoking his pipe. He kind of looks like if an owl got turned into a human being. So he's got this great look about him. But I like how casual he is about it.
He's very chill.
Yeah, like, oh, do you believe in vampires? Well, let's just say I neither believe nor disbelieve. Like, he's great. Although that sort of thing all falls out the window once he's actually, in this town, because he's immediately like, yes, there are vampires. And his relationship with the town sheriff is particularly funny to me, because
he had a good zinger in there.
Yeah, he's like, you guys are acting almost like you expected this to happen.
He's like, yes, I did.
Yes. No, he's interesting, and I don't know this actor who's playing that part. He's very, you're right. When you think about it, it's funny how well disguised they all are, because there are antecedents in Dracula. He's the Van Helsing character. Kay is the Renfield character. Dracula is Dracula, and
Kay's
so forth.
Lucy. Kay's Lucy.
Yes.
Claire is Mina. You've got Frank as Jonathan Harker. You've got Dr. Brewster as Dr. Seward. Like, they're all basically there.
Yeah.
The sheriff is Quincy, right?
Yes.
Like, you've got
Although that
Are all the
character doesn't show up in the Universal, but your point is, you're exactly right. Yeah. I also think, by the way, that if you compare it with the original Dracula, which has a really strong first act, and then you just kind of make it through the rest, this one moves more than that one. Like they are racing back and forth and through the swamps and stuff. So it's less static. Even though it is stage bound, it is way less static than.
Well, and it's more contained, right? They don't have to travel all the way across Europe to get to Transylvania to find Dracula at his castle. They don't. They can stay in London, or they can stay in Cardiff, more specifically.
Well, yeah, but
But
I'm talking about the Universal Dracula, and in the Universal Dracula, the beginning does take place in Transylvania, but the rest of it's all London, as you say.
oh, okay. And see, that's
But
not something I don't know because I haven't watched the Universal ones. I've watched the Hammer ones.
right. But yeah, that one, the Universal Dracula feels so stage bound because it is based on a play, where most of the action takes place in a drawing room where people come in and out and then talk to one
Well, that's where
another.
they got Bella, right? Because Bella was the stage Dracula.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and actually, Edward Van Sloan, the Van Helsing in that movie, was a stage Van Helsing. And yeah, you're right, Jason. This feels more like, of course, this is also later in the Universal canon, but this feels less like a stage play that they filmed and more like a proper movie in some respects. Like it's got that more, I would say, more akin to a Hammer movie in some ways, because it's got that sort of rollicking,
Yes.
like adventure movie. Like a lot of the Hammer movies are just as much adventure movies as they are horror movies. And
Yes.
this has that.
And
But it does
actually,
have that nice we're in a creepy castle feel, even though it's a plantation.
isn't that
Yes.
amazing? Yeah. There has to be one. Yeah. It's by the way, it's 12 years later. Come to think of it, I was looking at Dracula's 1931. It sort of blows my mind that this is, 12 years after that. That's a hell of a long time
Cash grab.
to be doing a sequel. Well, I mean, we're shocked, now in the last like 2 or 3 years we have this new thing where what do they call them? Legacy sequels. But up
Yeah.
until then, if it's 12 years later, you reboot it. You don't do yet another
By the way,
sequel.
speaking of 1931 Dracula and legacies, Lon Chaney Sr. was actually supposed to play Dracula in 1931, but then he died of something horrible called a throat hemorrhage, which just sounds awful, before they could start filming. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yes. And we were talking beforehand, by the way, that in in The Man of a Thousand Faces, which is the biopic where Jimmy Cagney plays Lon Chaney. Cagney's on his deathbed, and I don't know who he tells to hand it, but he reaches desperately for his makeup kit, and the person hands it to him, and he gets a grease pen, and he writes Junior after the name Lon Chaney, signifying that his son will have this career, which is grade A Hollywood bullshit. It has nothing to do with reality, none whatsoever. But that's why I love biopics so much, is because you're just in La La Land. Okay, so before we move to final thoughts, is there anything that we have not discussed about?
Frank. We got to talk about poor Frank and the horrible weekend he's having.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
God, yeah.
Yes, Frank Stanley, our sort of relatively handsome-faced male ingenue, who
Thank you.
is, yeah, he uh he spends a lot of time behind bars because he's trying to face off against Dracula, who stole his girl. He doesn't quite get that Kay is a horrible person. Like the love of his life, who has grown up with Kay, she has become this occult person who wants to lure Dracula to this plantation so she can become a vampire and then use him to betray Dracula and, I guess, be a lord vampire herself, whatever it is that she wants to
I have
do.
a headcanon about this though, because it's
Okay.
one like little quick dropped line way earlier, and it talks about she went on a trip to Bulgaria,
Okay.
right? And after that trip to Bulgaria, she was a changed person. She was suddenly morbid. She was suddenly into the occult stuff. She suddenly had Queen Zima come live in her swamp cottage
Yes.
nearby. So here's what I think happened. I think she meets Dracula Alucard in Bulgaria,
Okay.
and he does the mind trick on her, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
"Ooh, you will
Okay.
be my new bride because you really hot and diaphanous gowny."
Yes.
and sorry, and then she gets away from him because she has to go back home to the South, and she has time to think about it, and she's like, okay, yeah, because if he thinks that I'm on board with this, then I can get Frank on board with this. So I'll become a vampire, and then I'll kill Dracula, and then I'll make Frank a vampire, and I get all the good stuff, and I win.
Well, I mean, that's entirely possible, but Frank is just a sweet lunk who I just don't think you want to give eternal life to Frank. I mean,
No,
it's
no, no, no,
it,
no.
Well,
He would do nothing with it.
he apparently chooses not to have eternal life, but he's a really pitiable character. Like
yes,
he also is kind of the Renfield character in a way because of that, because
well said.
he's just sort of
Mhm.
pathetic, and like everything that happens to him, like even like this, first of all, like, this actor really slays, especially the scene where he has shot through Dracula and hits Kay, and his
Yeah.
all of his reactions and horrified look on his face. Like, he really sells this idea that he thinks he just murdered the love of his life.
He's
Yeah.
And
a really good actor. Like his eyes, you can see everything that's going on in that character's mind in his eyes. And especially later when he's just exhausted, like he's just destroyed Dracula, and you can just see the exhaustion. And then he comes out to open the door to show them that he's burned up Kay, and he's got the 1,000-mile stare going on. I'm like, that is some solid acting, my dude.
No, he's good.
Yes, good job.
Yes, I agree. So he is really great. I shouldn't mock him, but
Well, no, you're talking about the character, not the actor.
yeah, I mean, yeah, acting wise, he is very natural. He actually feels kind of ahead of his time as far as how well he's doing this and how naturally he's playing all of this.
But Drew, I think you're 1,000% correct. He's the Renfield.
Yeah.
So new title,
Well,
Renfield's Redemption.
K and I'm so sorry.
Bless you.
Um, yes, Kay and Frank split the so-called Renfield character, which was in the original Dracula, which interestingly was
Why
an
is she not Lucy though? I
amalgamation
don't understand why she's not just Lucy.
because she's more like Renfield. I'm not talking about Renfield of the book. I'm talking about Renfield of the Dracula, the 1931 Dracula. Renfield falls under Dracula's thrall and serves him as he comes to America. The difference
or
is, I'm
England.
sorry, England.
England.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. The difference is that Kay does all of that, but she retains way more control than Renfield ever did, and she's plotting against Dracula, which is
Yeah,
But she's
Renfield's
awesome.
also
not
the
a plotter.
bride.
Yes, you're right. They've sort of taken a lot of the cards and thrown them up in the air, which is
Well, they
really
even
neat.
like Brewster reads the book. Like there's literally a screen for a good like 15 seconds of just one of the paragraphs from the book. It's where Jonathan Harker is writing about being in the castle and he doesn't like it.
Yeah, what
Yes.
manner of man is this Dracula?
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, that gets us to our final thoughts on Son of Dracula, 1943, which again is the third Universal Dracula film. So, what order did we go in? I think it was Drew, Julia, and then Lee, and then we'll come around and we'll do endorsements. So, Drew, and by the way, Dracula is up on my screen right now. Yeah, Creighton as Dracula. Drew, final thoughts, Son of Dracula.
I like this movie. Again, it's a movie that I've grown to have a lot of affection for. I think that more people, if they haven't revisited it in a while, should maybe give it another chance with fresh eyes. Very nice looking movie. And I think it's got interesting characters. It's got a unique take on the whole vampire thing. And hats off to everybody involved for making something that we're still talking about in the 21st century.
Yeah,
So
no doubt.
that's something in of itself. But I'm not immune to noticing its flaws. I like I said, I do feel like the ending is a bit rushed. But that happens a lot in older monster movies. Like there's a lot of buildup, and then it's like, okay, we have to kill a monster now. But I still dig it.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. Julia, what about you?
Yeah, to me, what I want to come back to is that I just really like the special effects. I think it's really special. The way that the special effects wizard is called John Fulton. Um,
Hmm.
and the way that they do the whole thing where suddenly, like, you have the cheesy ass bat, but then
Yeah, we didn't
suddenly the
actually
bat,
talk about that, the
yeah,
special
you have
effects. I'm
this
so
the
sorry.
cheesy
The
bat,
bat.
and then suddenly the bat just that Dracula just kind of like drops out of the like I don't even know how to describe it, but he just suddenly fills the screen, starting at like the bat becomes his shoulders basically, and it's just so cool how that does. And then like I say, the smoke effect whenever he disappears or reappears from somewhere or he comes out of something beautiful. I just think that was really special. And just the whole look, like you were just talking about the I actually really like it. I'm with Jason about that the set is that the even being on this on the sound stage is pretty neat. And like I say, the shadows. Yeah, so I think, I think definitely it's like 99%. I like it, and I didn't have many issues with the script at all. Really, it's just the Lon Chaney accent is the biggest thing that bugs me. But and being spoiled by Bela Lugosi's crazy eyes. Um, but that's it. I think it's really enjoyable, and I definitely recommend people check it out if they haven't seen it.
What that means, by the way, Julia, is sometimes I'll experiment when I'm bored with a movie. I'll like turn on the French audio instead of the English, and so it might in a
Watch it
version
in
of this
Spanish.
where everybody right, watch it in Spanish where
Mhm.
everybody is using completely different accents. Maybe that would make a difference. I don't know.
Yeah,
I so
could be.
Lee, what about you?
I am 80-20 on this. I agree with you. The special effects are great, except for floppy bat at the beginning. And really, a lot of my notes are the bat is getting better. I like the bat. The bat's getting better. But like I was expecting something closer to the hammer, where like there were the pointy teeth, there was some blood, there was some sexiness. None
There
of
there
that.
are no pointy teeth in any of the Universal movies.
There are
Just
no pointy teeth. There was no blood. There was no sexiness. Except for a bat molested some people. That's like that
Yeah.
was they got molested by a bat.
I have to tell you, Lee, that when when the bat is like when the bat is sucking on what's his name? Jason, the guy that's the
Frank
main.
Stanley?
Yeah, Frank. I keep forgetting his name. I started singing "I'm being eaten by a bat shadow, bat shadow, bat shadow." But it was just so funny because it's just like this shadow of this bat is like sucking on this guy. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
Well, and the fang holes are just bad hickeys. They're not.
Exactly.
There's nothing piercy about them. I'm 80-20, 80%. This was fun. I liked it. I had a good time. It was a great way to spend a Sunday morning. And the 20 is, I think a good 15% of that is that Lon Chaney Jr. looks exactly like my dad. So I can't get into it. Like, yep, that was dad circa age 45. That was dad.
that would
Um
be weird if you did think he was sexy then.
it was
So
well,
I'm
no, I
glad
mean
you
my dad's
didn't.
an attractive guy, but sexy is not the word.
Yeah.
Don't he doesn't listen to this, so I'm safe. But the other 5% is I'm just really mad because it's such good potential that was wasted. Maybe because they rushed it or because of the script issues or whatnot. So I'm team I want a reboot. I want a remake of this. I want a remake of this where we were like totally blindsided by Kay's plan and Dracula's totally blindsided, and I would love to see a reboot of this with proper accents.
I agree. That would be really great to have basically to have an unofficial remake of this movie
Well,
would be
Universal
great.
has nothing else interesting going on, so Universal, get at it. Let's go.
Yeah, you would think. The yes. That's a wonderful idea. I have nothing to add to that. Let us come around to our endorsements. Well, I will say this. This is just the first of our Halloween segment. We're going to be doing some really interesting stuff leading up to Halloween. So stick around. We're going to be doing Son of Dracula and Scars of Dracula.
We just did Son of Dracula.
Yes, well, this is Son of Dracula. We're going to be doing Scars of Dracula. We're going to be doing Werewolf by Night and Midnight Hour, which is a crazy film. And what is it that we're ending with? I'm trying to remember. It's something major. That's
Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
yes. Yes, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Although at
Once
some point
again.
you really do need to do Midnight Mass.
Yes, that one will require. Yes, it's long, man. I
It's
mean,
long.
so but it's really good. Yes. So anyway, all right. Endorsements. Drew, starting with you, do you have anything that you recommend to our fine audience?
So I got, hold on here and let me make sure I'm getting title right. I got a copy of the new Alex Ross comic book, Fantastic Four Full Circle, which is first of all, a semi-sequel to a famous Stanley Jack Kirby story, This Man, This Monster, but you don't need to have read it to enjoy this. It's just like everything Alex Ross. It's just gobsmackingly beautiful, and it's a different style than you think of, like his Kingdom Come style. It's almost like blacklight art, so it's very
Wow.
psychedelic, and much more evocative of Jack Kirby. But man, like, so beautiful. I highly recommend it to anybody that is a comic book fan. Even if you're not a Fantastic Four fan, like if you just like pretty artwork, you will like this.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Julia, do you have anything to endorse?
Well, everybody has been talking about Don't Worry, Darling. And like some people have just been talking about the drama behind the scenes. Other people have trashed the movie. I saw it. I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. Yeah, there's a few little things where I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know about this part. But it's gorgeous to look at. It's really interesting. It's very thought provoking. I've thought more about that movie and had more questions than I have about anything I've seen in a long time. Performances are great, very creative. So I don't know. I mean, I think people just need to just shut up. Because I liked it and I think it's worth watching. But yeah, I get that, people have their issues with whatever's going on behind the scenes, which I'm like, I don't really feel like that needs to affect what experience that you have seeing the film, but that's just me. And maybe I don't feel that way all the time, but I do about this one.
I loved it. I really had a good time watching it, beginning to end. I really enjoyed it. And we've been talking about it for days afterwards, so it really paid off like
And
that.
there's been some speculation that the behind the scenes stuff is just a publicity stunt, that it's not really, everyone's actually fine with each other and they just weren't getting enough press, so they needed to make up some drama. Which is an
I don't
old
know.
Hollywood
I
trick.
mean, maybe, but again, 'cause, like I say, I question myself as soon as I say it when I say, who cares what's going on behind the scenes? Because, of course, sometimes you do. I mean, sometimes if somebody's just a horrible person, you're like, I don't really want to reward this person's behavior. But in this case, it's like, I mean, I don't really know what happened in this situation. And it's not going to affect my enjoyment of this performance.
Well, especially because everything is so petty. It's
Yeah.
all so petty. It's
Well,
also
it's not necessarily petty, but it's just not. I just don't know what's going on in somebody's marriage or what's going on in somebody's relationship. All that stuff. It's like it's not my. That's not my business. So
all
anyway.
right. Anyway, so watch Don't Worry Baby, don't listen to the hype. And Lee, what about you?
So I have
Don't worry, darling. Don't worry,
Oh,
baby.
I'm sorry.
I'm really
Don't worry,
excited to
darling.
see that. Mostly I'm just excited for spooky season and having some time to catch up on all these great movies. My viewing is limited to Bluey and thankfully not Paw Patrol of late. But I have always been a huge Neil Gaiman fan. And Sandman was awesome, and I'll be so mad if they don't renew it. But I've also finally been able to get into the audio version of Sandman. I really want to read the comics, but there's just not time in my life right now. This is going to sound wild, but go back and watch Jurassic Park. It is a fun movie. I get to teach film lit this year, which has been great. I'm so excited. And our next movie is Coraline, where we're going to have a huge argument as to whether or not it's a children's movie. Because I told my husband, yeah, so we're going to watch Coraline for spooky season. And he goes, you can't show them that. I was like, honey, it's rated PG. And he's like, that movie feels like a snuff film. That is not an appropriate movie for children. No one should be watching that. I'm like,
a little
where the hell
harsh.
did you come up with that? That's a little far, Zach. And he's like, nope, I hate it. Don't. I was like, too late. We're doing it.
Excellent.
We just watched Jurassic Park, and we had a really good debate as to whether or not it's a horror movie or not. And I am very firmly camp horror adventure.
It's
It's
If you
great.
haven't watched it
totally
in a while,
It
watch
holds
it.
up great. It's
I
beautiful.
love
And
totally a horror movie. It's a Frankenstein movie.
it really is. You shouldn't play God. And so attached to that is, if you haven't watched the Movies That Made Us series on Netflix, go watch the Movies That Made Us series.
Yeah,
It's
I've endorsed
amazing.
that series twice because it's so good. It's
Well,
so
I am
interesting.
seconding Julia. And the last thing that I will endorse is you should definitely check out the very finely curated spooky season of Castle of Horror podcast. You should definitely do that.
Aw.
Because it's
Curated.
curated. Mhm.
It's curated. We're classy over here.
I'm gonna regret ever saying that, I think.
Are you kidding
I-
me? That's the best thing.
I'm with you, my friend. Gosh, okay, my only endorsement is I have been having the best time while I've been working. There's going to various playlists for Halloween on YouTube where they'll, and I found one that's just a collection of 20s and 30s Halloween songs,
Ooh.
like big band Halloween songs, and it's
Like
just
the house
great.
is haunted?
I don't know. I
The
don't
house
remember.
is haunted by the echo of your last goodbye. It's a good one.
I will take your word for that. But basically, this is the period where I'll just play lots of like short stuff, just like long playlists of haunted shorts and big band Halloween stuff and ballyhoo for stage shows and it's one of my favorite times of the year for just the audio visual going on in my office. So anyway,
Before you
maybe
sign out, Jason, we have to say thank you to Lee for
Yes.
joining us. What a treat.
Yeah, and in Eastern
Short
time
The treat is
too.
mine.
So I'm
That's such
very
short
thankful that
notice.
you would join us. I know you got to go to school in the morning, and it is already damn late. So
Don't remind me. It's
That's-
homecoming week. Just I'm a Grinch about homecoming. I'm like, can we just not? I don't
Hey,
want
at
to be a
least you're not in
Hawaiian.
Texas where you have to see those giant mums that take up they're like the size of an entire dress.
Oh, I love the mums though. That's a lot. I'm a sucker for mums. I buy a bunch of mums.
Yeah, but mums are not the same as what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Texas. Like literally, my friends who are in Texas have been posting pictures, and they literally now. I'm not kidding. They're literally the size of an entire full floor length dress. Like the top part fills the whole chest, and then the ribbons are as wide as your hips. It's crazy.
Sounds so cool.
yeah, it's.
You have not
I,
dissuaded me.
Julia, we didn't go to homecoming, did we, together? I'm trying to remember.
This is gonna be a whole thing, and we're gonna end up having a fight because of all the things that you didn't go to with me.
But I did
Let's not even
see
get
a picture of him in the back of the theater club Corvette, and that was very cool.
No,
Yeah,
and he was part of the homecoming court, but not from my school, for another school that he was at.
that was a
Jason,
different.
I sent you the song in the chat so you can have
a different girlfriend.
You guys can have a good
Sweet.
listen.
That wasn't that. You're misunderstanding. I was just.
Okay.
I don't remember why I went to.
Bye,
Jason,
everybody.
stop digging yourself into the hole.
No, hand him a shovel. This is great. Keep going.
Often I feel like sometimes we get these little peeks into the history of their relationship, and it's always fascinating, but I also don't want to facilitate into an argument. So yeah.
No, it's been too long to be.
I actually don't remember anything.
It's been too long to get upset about any of that stuff.
He couldn't even remember the picture was his sister. He's like, one of those blondes is my sister. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, well, there's three blondes in that, but they're all like a quarter turn, like they're like it's all around the football, and I can't tell which one is my sister.
Now
But
I
that's
see
okay.
what picture you're talking about because I'll definitely know which one.
Yeah, for sure.
Lee,
sure.
if you really
Super
want to
funny.
get the lowdown on the romance of these two, you have to listen to the RoboCop episode of Castle Horror.
Oh yeah.
I did listen to the RoboCop episode, and then I watched
Yeah.
RoboCop because I had not seen it before, and my husband was like, "That's grounds for divorce. We're watching RoboCop." So, but I mean, you've got episode 400 coming down the pike very quickly. I think maybe we need to have a very nicely curated little Julian and Jason section.
Aw.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be, but okay. Well, I will extricate myself from this conversation. And I'm so thankful for all of you as always. And Tony, if you're listening, which I'm sure you're not because he's watching like 40 movies over the course of a week.
And
And
including apparently a real banger of a Child's Play documentary.
Ooh,
really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. He did post about that. So yes.
I love documentaries about horror stuff.
I look forward to seeing it. What, Jason?
No, somebody recommended a documentary about horror, and I can't remember which one it was, but there's been a lot of them recently. By the way, Drew, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I got Friday 13th Part 3 in 3D with glasses.
Nice.
So we are going to be watching that at my house. So, all right, everybody.
Okay, but you also need to watch Hocus Pocus. This is your homework.
Okay.
Hocus Pocus.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Be excellent to one another. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Night.